Hoffman crossing the line, gliding into the Canadian zone. Watch out, Turris trying to get it past Byron. 2-on-1 the other way. Byron has Danault going to the net. Slows down. Here's Danault. He scores!
Good for him.
Philip Danault with a great game, and he finishes it in overtime, converting a Byron pass, and the Canadians win it 3-2.
Weekend game plan here on TSN 690. We're here till 9 o'clock. Pre-game show for Jaguars and Colts live from London, England, followed by the 9:30 kickoff, and then the Alouettes at 1 o'clock, and then the Habs and Leafs coming up at 7 o'clock tonight. Pre-game for that at 5. A big day of live sports radio for you here on TSN 690. That clip from Ottawa yesterday afternoon, not last night, yesterday afternoon, with Dan Robertson, Sergio Momesso. Habs win in overtime 3-2 over the Ottawa Senators. We're in our Habs Breakfast segment here on TSN 690. Jay Farrar in studio, Dave Trentadue, who was at the game yesterday working for TSN 690 on the board. And on the phone right now joining us, you can follow him on twitter.com/Stu Cowan1. It is Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette. Check out montrealgazette.com for the video and audio and obviously written from the game. How you doing, Stu?
I'm very good. Yourself?
I'm well, thanks. Wow, what a star-studded affair yesterday, huh?
Yeah, it was. There wasn't too many familiar names there, but it was impressive the way the Canadians came back and finished it up, though.
3 points for Paul Byron. That pretty much tells you all you need to know about the star power from both teams last night.
Yeah, Paul Byron. I like Paul Byron since they brought him here. I mean, he brings something to his top level speed. A guy who can play on different lines, and he has some offensive skill when he gets a chance, and especially when he gets in on a break. But I mean, that was your number one line with Torrey Mitchell, so that sort of says nothing. Not knocking those two guys, but when that's your number one line, it sort of says the type of players that they had in the lineup.
Do you think the performance yesterday of Al Montoya kind of assuages, kind of just calms the whole thought of any of these other goaltenders going to be the backup? Do you think it's now kind of a done deal?
I think so, especially after Mike Condon the night before with 4 goals on 21 shots. I mean, after the game, even Michel Therrien said it wasn't really all his fault. I mean, the first 2 shots were in. It was sort of some bad bounces and bad breaks. But when you're fighting for the job, and Al Montoya is obviously, they went out and got him because they weren't happy with, or they didn't think that Condon was the guy to be the backup this year. And he has looked very calm with the puck and making saves, so I think it's pretty much a done deal. And the question now is they have 5 goalies with 4 spots. You have 2 here in Montreal and 2 in St. John's, and you wonder where Condon ends up after all of this, because I think they're going to want the 2 kids playing in St. John's with Fucale and Lindgren. So I don't know what's going to happen with Mike Condon or what's going to happen with Fucale. Lindgren is obviously ahead of Fucale, I think, on the depth chart. So it'll be interesting to see what happens at the end of camp and which goalie is going where.
Stu, you'd have to think as a second-round pick they're going to concentrate on Fucale at least. I mean, he's been hovering around for a few years now, and I'm sure they're going to want to groom him and maybe concentrate on him. Do you think Mike Condon could stand out? He might have some value as a backup goaltender. I mean, obviously he played a lot last year, and of course that isn't entirely reflective of what he can do on the ice. He was kind of exposed, but as a guy who can play 20, 25 games in a season, would he have value for another NHL club?
He might. I mean, if I remember right, I think he was 7-0 to start the season.
That's right.
Last year.
Yeah.
And the backup role, and that's what he was expecting. He really got thrown into the fire. I feel for Mike Condon. He got thrown into a situation he wasn't really expecting to get thrown into. And, he did a good job for a while, but then I think it wore him down a little bit. And, maybe some other teams got to break down him on video and maybe find some weaknesses. The only other thing with Fucale, as you said, a second-round pick, if there's any kind of trade value with him for another team looking for a young goalie, that's maybe another option for Marc Bergevin. But as I said, that's one of the things that's going to be really interesting to see as the camp goes on. I think Montoya has the backup job won. And they're going to want the kids, I think, if they keep both of them, they're going to want them to play in St. John's. It'll be interesting to see how they do it, whether they go with the hot hand or whether they rotate them. Make sure they both get some action in there. But as I said, there's going to be one odd man out in the goaltending situation when the camp's over.
Weekend game plan with Matthew Ross here on TSN 690. It's Habs Breakfast. Stu Cowan and the Montreal Gazette on the line. Jay Farrar here in studio. Dave Trentadue as well. Stu, the prevailing thought here, there's always a darling, right? There's always somebody at camp that people want to see make the team, and maybe it was him as well last year, but it seems like the roars are a little louder from Habs Nation this time around about Michael McCarron and trying to make this roster. There are thoughts that people want to see him on the top line with St. John's to really hone his offensive side of things, but that physical presence, the ability to kind of protect teammates and throw a body check at a good moment is really enticing. Where do you see him landing come October 13th?
If I was a betting man, I would see him starting off in St. John's, but if I was making the call, I'd have him starting at Montreal. I think they're lacking size up front. They have so many forwards that are sort of, they have a lot of guys are sort of the same. You have Torrey Mitchell and you have Brian Flynn and you have Danault. They're all sort of the same guy. Andrew Ghetto and Byron are a little bit similar. They don't have that big forward. And Mike McCarron's a huge guy. He's lost 10 pounds since last season. He looks in fantastic shape. And he's a physical presence. He throws his weight around. He's not afraid to defend his teammates if necessary. And he's a guy that, if a power play is struggling, you can stick him in front of the net. He's a big body for a goalie to try and look around. And so if it was up to me, I would have him starting here. But if I have a feeling that they're going to send him down to St. John's and let him get a little bit more seasoning and maybe bring him up later.
Jay, you do the pregame. You're talking to the fans during the week. Is it safe to say this is the guy they want to see on the team the most of the non-regulars?
Yeah, well, he's a guy. Obviously, he's a guy who has size, right? And that's what they like to see. So I think there's a lot of people rooting for Mike McCarron, even myself, and he's gotten better throughout the training camp. And I think it's a guy people want to see clear some space for some of the Canadian snipers and some of the smaller players. And people are rooting for him. Stu, I wanted to ask you about the depth chart when it comes to defense. Do you think the Canadians might roll 8 players? You're looking at guys with some different skill sets here. Barberio can play both sides. Redmond has been looking good. And obviously they're grooming Sergachev, who looked pretty good in his first game as well. Do you think the Canadians might go 8 deep and sit 2 guys?
I'd be surprised. But Sergachev was really impressive that first game he played. And he was even more impressive when you interview him off the ice. It's hard to believe the kid's 18 years old. He's very composed, very professional. His English is fantastic for a kid who didn't speak a word of it at this time last year when he went to play junior in Windsor. And he's calm with the puck, a nice skater. But I can't see them keeping him here. I can see them sending him back to junior and just having him dominate there this year. But he's looked good. And Zach Redmond also. Zach Redmond is a guy, sort of the forgotten man during the offseason with all the talk of Weber and PK and everything else. So a lot of people probably didn't even realize they'd picked up Zach Redmond. But he's a strong guy. He's a good skater. He's got some offensive skill. And it goes back, Marc Bergevin always says you can never have too many defensemen, and he continues to follow that with just these guys he seems to be able to pick up. And Redmond's look good, and he's a strong guy. When you see him in the room, he's a muscular, strong man.
So why, Stu, why do you think it is that he isn't an NHL regular yet then? If he's got, he looks so good, and he's got the physical attributes.
It's also preseason, so you're not playing against the top NHL players. So it's maybe a little easier for a guy like him to look good. But I mean, there's so many good hockey players out there that there's a lot of good hockey players playing in the AHL. I mean, when I went down to St. John's last year at the end of the season and talking with Zach Fucale and McCarron and some of the guys who were getting their first taste of pro hockey, and they were, I wouldn't say shocked, but they were a little bit surprised just how good the hockey is in the AHL and how high a level the play is there. So, there's a lot of good hockey players that aren't in the NHL, and Zach Redmond is one of those guys who's sort of fighting to get a spot, and a lot of it has to do with the team you're on and the depth and how many defensemen they have, et cetera. So it's interesting. I mean, he's looked really good during the preseason, and it's another guy. Will he be on the team to start the season? I'd sort of be surprised because they're more or less set on their defense. But he's a guy that's definitely ready to come up if somebody gets hurt.
Hey, Stu, one guy I had my eye on yesterday was Charles Hudon. Has he done enough? And I guess more importantly, can he do enough? Is there any way you see him making this team? And if not, where does he sit on the depth chart?
I'd be very surprised. I see him going back to St. John's. As I said, he's talk about how they have so many players that are sort of similar. He sort of falls into that category. Also, another sort of smallish, skilled forward. He's like another Andrew Ghetto type guy, and I think he's going to end up back in St. John's. As I said, there's a lot of good hockey players playing in the AHL, and I think he should be one. I don't see a spot that they have open for him here.
Stu Cowan on the line, Jay Farrar here in studio, Dave Trentadue as well. I'm Matthew Ross. This is Weekend Game Plan, our Habs Breakfast segment, just winding down the segment. So we have the Leafs today, right here on TSN 690, 7 o'clock puck drop with Dan Robertson and Sergio Momesso. We expect, we're speculating that it'll be Fucale in nets today. Is that your assumption?
I would think so. I haven't seen anything the Habs yet on it, but that would sort of make sense. They've been giving guys full games now. That's 2 in a row, so I guess it's his turn now to play the full 60 minutes and see what he can do. He's a young guy too, when I was down in St. John's last year, he was talking about just the adjustment to being a pro hockey player. And maybe some people don't really realize. I mean, there's a lot more free time when you're a pro hockey player for the first time. Your practice is over at say noon or so, and then you got the rest of the day to do whatever you want to do. You're sort of in a new city and whatnot. The Ice Caps do a really good job of trying to keep the guys around their rink as long as possible. They have lunch for them afterwards. They have set up there for working out and everything else. But the lifestyle of being a pro hockey player and being in a new city is an adjustment. And Zach Fucale went through it last year. He'll be even more prepared for it this year, more comfortable in St. John's, and it's going to be interesting to see. So that goaltending battle in St. John's will be interesting to watch between him and Lindgren.
Weekend Game Plan here on TSN 690. You mentioned Lindgren, just to end off here on Habs Breakfast, a guy that was signed and many thought, wow, this is an incredible signing. What have you seen from him that gets you excited about his future? And do you think it'll be kind of a 1-1A down in St. John's, let somebody rise to the top, or is there a predetermined guy who will start more of the games? I
would think starting off would probably be Lindgren, just the way they went after him so hard last year. And what's impressed me just watching him in practice in Brossard is how quick he is. He's really, really quick going across post to post and coming out. Very athletic in net. He's also one of those guys that catches with his right hand, which is something a little different. But he just looks like a real athletic goalie in there. He comes out quick, challenges quick, and some of the drills they do in practice where they have sort of a semicircle in front of the net, and the guys keep shooting pucks and rebounds, and the goalie's diving all over the place. And it's really sort of neat to watch him when he does that, just to watch how quick he gets across.
He is Stu Cowan. MontrealGazette.com is the website. Check out the hockey coverage, including Habs Inside Out, or HockeyInsideOut.com as well. Stu, thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, no problem. Good luck with the show.
Oh, thank you very much. Weekend Game Plan with Matthew Ross. We are jam-packed until 9 o'clock. Just after 8:30, we'll talk to John McMullen of todayspigskin.com and several other websites. We're talking some NFL as Week 4 is upon us. We'll have Colts-Jaguars coming up at 9:30. That's the kickoff. Adam Schefter reporting. We mentioned it on the Sports Center at 8 o'clock that the starting tight end for the Jaguars, Julius Thomas, out with an elbow injury, and Mercedes Lewis will get the start. So adjust your lineups accordingly. And don't forget, 1 o'clock, Alouettes versus the Argonauts. It's sold out Molson Stadium today. Sean Campbell on the play-by-play. We'll have the Habs pregame show at 5 o'clock today. 7 o'clock puck drop for Habs versus Leafs. So a lot of live sports coming your way here on TSN 690. On the other side, it is Week 4 in the NFL, and we have some big storylines. So let's get to those and so much more. Stay tuned.